Hello, Tracy.
Oh,
Hello, good morning where you are, I imagine.
it's midday right now.
Midday.
So
Oh, depends where you live in the world. In Spain, morning goes till 2 o'clock. But where you are, I think morning is now over. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today on this video, having a discussion about parenting. Parenting in general, and also touching a little bit on the current crisis, which is affecting us all with COVID-19. And yeah, and I just really appreciate you being part of this. I only met you on Monday. You have already made an impact. I have to say, you just have so much insight into parenting. And the world needs to hear what you have to say. It left me kind of, when you hear someone speak and then afterwards you're pondering on it and thinking, wow, that's interesting, and it gets you thinking deeper. So thank you. So Tracy, you have 3 adult children. It seems impossible, but you do. 3 adult children. You're a life and business coach, and you have a business called switchism.com, coaching business. Okay. And you used to work in the fashion industry and events, and now you're 100% working as a coach.
yes, I actually just received my credentials. Like,
I always say it wrong.
definitely did a lot of coaching when I was working in fashion because we represented artists, and so I did a lot of business coaching, and it ended up being a lot of personal coaching there as well. But I took the program with Coacharya last year, and really my passion, although I do business coaching as well, but I'm really passionate about life coaching and sort of working with people on a personal level. Although as Ram, my mentor and teacher, says, all coaching is life coaching. So.
True in a way, yes. Yeah. So on the topic of parenting,
Yeah.
why is parenting something that you really want to talk about and that you find quite important as a topic?
Well, it's actually really interesting because, like I shared with you on Monday, my first reaction when Magda approached me about this was, oh, I can't talk about parenting. Because I have very conflicted feelings about the way I parented. I was a single parent, as you touched on. I was very young. I was 18 when I had my oldest child, and by 20, I had 3.
Wow.
And at 24, my husband died quite suddenly, and so I kind of a widow with 3 young children. And I did have support of family, but I was the main parent, or the sole parent, really. And there were a lot of struggles that came with that. So I've had to come to terms
Mm-hmm.
with the
Yeah.
fact that I was a child at that point in time. And I have now a lot of compassion for myself back then, but I've dealt with a lot of guilt and a lot of conflict about the way that I parented. So my first reaction was, I can't talk to people about parenting. you know but on reflecting on that, I realized, especially right now with everything going on, there's probably a lot of parents that are struggling as well with different types of loss, identity. All of a sudden they're home with their kids and they're being thrust into being teachers, and maybe they're not working. So then I thought, maybe some of what I have to say will be a little bit relevant to that.
It definitely will be relevant. That there is no one book, no one class to teach people to be parents. In fact, we don't ever get taught really to be parents. So everyone is different completely. And some people will have had a similar upbringing, some people different. And I think everything that you bring to this conversation is absolutely vital, and it's so important to the world of parenting, because there is no specific way at all. So tell me more about your parenting and some challenges and successes.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, to start with, I guess the happy ending, I have three beautiful children. My oldest is 30. I have asked him to lie about his age, but no, I'm kidding. I'm not. But yeah, my oldest is 30, and we've definitely had our ups and our downs, but all three of them are people that I am so proud of. I feel close to all of them, and I feel like we've kind of made it through a time that was difficult for me and a time that was difficult for them, and they've stuck by me as well, and I stuck by them. So I mean, that's the happy ending of it. But definitely, I mean, as I said, I was young, and I was in a situation that I felt like, and I feel like this is relevant today because there's so much comparison happening right now. And back then, when I would compare where I was as a parent with other parents, with, their schoolmates and their parents, there just was no comparison, but that didn't stop me from making those comparisons.
Yeah.
So it tended to be that most of their friends had parents that were older. They usually had two parents. Even if those two parents weren't together, they still had two parents. Some of them had nannies. Generally, their parents had more time with them. Or if they didn't have time with them, they were in, sports programs or after school programs or those types of things. So, and they were in different, for the most part, in different income brackets as well. So I sort of judged myself as lacking based on that. And my children as well, I'm not going to say they judged me, but they also felt things were missing. And that put me in a situation at that point in time where, for various reasons, I sort of sought my fulfillment elsewhere. So I have my resource as a young adult and going up until like the last few years, when something was difficult to avoid it, I would be like, okay, I'm gonna put that into this little box over here, and then I'll focus on this, and this. And so what I did is I focused a lot on my career. That was partly for survival. That was partly because, we needed me to work in order for us to make it. But it was a lot more than that too. That was also where I was able to feel like I was able to measure my successes. That was where I was, I felt like I had goals that I could work towards that maybe were going to magically make things better for me and us as a family as well. And that, and then because of that, I became very, very work focused. I spent a lot of time at work. And I also fed on this need for, this need to be needed, this need to be validated. And so I would take on more and more and more, wanting more and more approval. And then worry about how if I was going to fail, how I was going to keep up. I was stressed, I was anxious, and and then meantime things at home were like chaotic. And so then on top of that, I sort of found my emotional fulfillment through my social circle. So I had a really super busy work life, and then my social life involved with a lot of people that were in fashion. They were a lot of fun. They were mostly younger than me. They didn't have kids, and it was a very busy, very fun pace of life that was hardly sustainable even just for the average single person, never mind a single mother.
Yeah.
So I did have a lot of directions that I was pulled in, and unfortunately a lot of those really took me away from our family unit and the focus that I would have liked to have there.
And you were so young as well, so young, and with a career, and hats off to you. A lot of single parents might have struggled to work as well as look after their children. So you've worked so hard. You really, really have. And you've been through so many challenges yourself, and you've got through them. Mm-hmm. And for me, challenges are kind of opportunities, in a sense, not opportunities to grow, and the hard. At the time, it doesn't feel like that. But as we get older and we get through them, to me, they always feel like they're an opportunity to grow in a way. So for you, how do you think those challenges in your life and in your children's life helped them to grow to where they are today?
Well, I think it's interesting that you asked that. I mean, I do think that the fact that I had a super strong work ethic, that I was a strong figure in their lives, motivated them in that sense, and made them very independent because I was very independent. And they were independent because, like, let's be honest, they were latchkey kids too. So they didn't have a mother sitting at home, like kind of maybe nurturing them the same way, but that made them a little more fierce as well.
Fierce, I like that.
Didn't always serve them or me well when they were teenagers, but definitely is serving them well now. They're all very strong as a result of that. And also, I think the fact that it was just me and them, and the fact that I was younger and there wasn't a huge gap, I'm not going to say, oh, I was friends with my kids. I am friends with them now,
Mm-hmm.
We were able to relate a little more. And we did have some sometimes really difficult, but we did communicate a lot all through those years.
Okay, so you did communicate. So in regards to communication, what kind of things worked? What got better through time? Because communication is something that people keep touching on, and it seems to be a key area when being a parent and growing with your children. So tell me more about that, about your communication with them.
Well, I think that mainly I was thinking about this, and I think a lot of it was the fact that because I didn't have an ego as a parent, because almost I felt very humbled, and I was able to receive their I'm going to say feedback, even when it wasn't the nicest.
Yeah.
But that really kept the door open because, there were times I think about myself with my parents, and they were very strict, loving parents, but very strict. And I didn't feel like, until I got myself worked up to being really angry, I didn't feel like I could share with them, what I felt was lacking, because that would be disrespectful. My kids didn't have that hesitation with me. But I really
think
I do think that's a good thing. I really do. I think, especially as a single parent, I was their person. I was the only person that they couldn't go and talk to another parent about me, I was the only one that they could come to, because they needed to be able to share with me when I was disappointing them. They needed to be able to tell me sometimes that they hated me, and these things are terrible to hear. But that's where I was thinking, I think, a communication like that without attachment,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't say, I want us to communicate, and then when something's too difficult, say, oh no, you've crossed the line. You either communicate or you don't. And if you're opening the door to communication, you are opening that door, and you have to be prepared for whatever's going to come at you. And that's it.
And sometimes that can be difficult. And, hats off to you for accepting that feedback. It's difficult.
It was difficult. And, it's still difficult sometimes. I still get it. So, I mean, even my children, like I said, are all adults, but I also recently chose to move to another country, and there were some feelings about that I had to hear. So it's not of course, the initial reaction is always, it is always difficult to hear something about yourself that is hard to hear. But the key is that you have to be prepared to hear it if you want to have open communication and direct communication.
I think that's such an important point. You have to be able to hear it, to have that direct communication, and also to learn and to grow and improve on it. So it's not a repetitive cycle of making the same mistake again and the same thing happening. I think it's fantastic that you've got that two-way communication with your children. And it sounds like they've grown up to be able to communicate quite well themselves.
Yes.
Definitely. So in regards to kind of COVID-19, this lockdown, what are your thoughts on that for parents across the world and how hard that actually might be, but also the benefits?
Yes. So many thoughts on that. I mean, where that really came up for me was we were talking about comparison. And there's this thing, I've been reading a little bit about it. It's called comparative or comparison suffering or something. So it's when you compare yourself to those that are doing better than you and you feel like you're not doing well enough. But also when you compare yourself to people that are doing worse than you and you think, I have no right to complain.
Interesting.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And either or, that's not, because we're invalidating our own feelings if we are constant. There's always going to be someone that's doing a little worse than we are, but things can still be hard.
Yep.
Things, you know, and we need to validate that for ourselves and for our children. Our children are going through, you know, I'm saying our collectively as a community right now, their whole world has been yanked out from under them. And I think when you're saying to them, well, you know, at least you have a roof over your heads and this is happening in this part of the world and imagine how these people feel, then you're removing their ability to process and deal with actually what's going on with them, and also cutting off that communication. And then again, it's the comparison as well to people that are doing better. And I mean, I look at social media sometimes and I'm seeing some parents and like, hats off to them, you know, they're doing art with their kids, they're baking, they're excelling at homeschooling, and it's like, that's wonderful. And you know what, I'm not criticizing them for that, but what comes up for me is, what about those parents that are struggling with all of those things? What are they saying to themselves? What are they thinking? Because I think of myself, if I were back, you know, being young Tracy in this world that we have right now and seeing that, and, you know, thankfully when I was a young parent, there wasn't the same social media that there is now. It might have been crushing, you know. I just think how difficult that might be when you're feeling like you're just not quite measuring that. I also think about single parents and how they're managing. I think about working parents that are right now trying to adjust to the fact that maybe they're not working and they're home with their kids and they've got all this time. So it's a challenging time.
Very. Yeah. And when you mention social media and people posting things about doing the art, doing sports and doing schooling, people show what they want you to see. And I think that's one of the problems with social media, is we start then comparing ourselves to something that's not even reality. And it can hurt and it can make us feel like, oh my gosh, we should be doing more. The truth is, it's quite easy to take a quick video and a quick selfie and share all these amazing things you're doing, but very rarely do people share the challenges and the bits where they're not doing so well. So it can be a false kind of feeling of, oh my gosh, everyone else is doing great and I'm not. Yeah. Whereas actually they probably are doing just as well and just as bad in those moments of difficulty as each other.
Absolutely. That's a great observation. I feel like it would be so much more helpful. And some people are, but you know, in general, if we're sharing our vulnerabilities and actually coming through and saying, this has been really hard for me today. How are you feeling? And sure, the positivity is good too, but it needs to show a little bit of both.
I like that very much. Yeah. Show those vulnerabilities. And when I first met you earlier in the week, that was something that stood out to me, was actually, I felt like, oh, you know, I can see similarities here, because I'm not a mum. I don't have any children, but my mum was a single mum, and we grew up in a okay-ish community, maybe not the best and what have you. And we had very little money, very little opportunities. And compared to all my school friends, like Christmas was always like, okay, you got that, I don't want to know. And I was very humble. And I'm actually so grateful that it happened, because right now I have so much gratitude for the most little things in life and those experiences and even holidays and stuff that I didn't have when I was a child. But, nobody else spoke about their vulnerabilities and their challenges, and the way that this is the beauty of social media and the things like this now. This didn't exist. There was nowhere for mum to speak with other people and to get support. And there was nowhere for me to go, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one with a single mum. So your vulnerability is so helpful to hundreds, if not thousands, of people out there. Very much.
Well, it's helpful to me as well. It's helpful to me as well because it's it really is. I think it's Brene Brown that just talks about how, oh yes, this is my dog, Charlie.
Charlie, you've just taken over Brene Brown, and that's nearly impossible.
Yeah, I think she's the one that connects it to courage, right? And really, I think that has been, and it's been key for me even with coaching as well, to be honest. And that was something that Ram really helped me with at one point when he was giving me some feedback just about how, it's important to actually show vulnerability in order to connect with people on a genuine level. Otherwise, you're kind of only letting people connect to a very two-dimensional part of you, right?
That's so true. And that's very similar with what's been happening on social media. Very similar.
Yeah.
It is. Oh.
The other thing that's come up for me when I'm seeing all the posts about, the things that people have been doing with their kids, and certainly there's a lot that you have to do, a lot, to keep them entertained at a time like this when there's not that much going on. Or there's not that much going on. When there's so much going on, but there's not that much outside of your home.
Literally, there's not much going on for the families.
There's not much going on for the families. But I was thinking about it today, and I was thinking about how, because I worked so much, but every once in a while, usually every year, I would take a couple of weeks off, and I was very lucky that my aunt had a place out in Manitoba we would go to. She would rent a cottage, usually for the summer, and we would go there. And it was always an adjustment for those first few days because, I was adjusting from not working and all of a sudden being with my kids, and my kids were adjusting with me being around the whole time and being away from their friends, which is never easy for, I think at this point they were, around like 9 or 10, somewhere around that sort of pre-adolescence phase. And it was always, like I said, a little bit of an adjustment. But once we sort of got past that, what really mattered was the time that we were spending. So it wasn't so much like, we weren't like throwing ourselves into like arts and crafts and this and that and the other thing, but it was actually like spending time together. I remember none of them, they're all readers now, but at that time they weren't. They were doers. They were super active and they loved doing things, right? But this was around the time that Harry Potter had just come out. And so we would just sit together after dinner and we would read Harry Potter. My cousin and I would take turns reading, my aunt sometimes, and they loved it. And like, this was amazing. Their kids are like 10, 11, and they enjoyed just having like this little circle where we would sit and read. So I think that you can get a little carried away about thinking all the things that we have to do. But I think kids are just going to be happy to have us around until they aren't. But
I couldn't agree more with that. The simplicity being so important. The reading of the books together as a family. That connection straight away as well, because you are together and listening to a story and sharing it at that moment. And as you said, things are going a bit over the top sometimes. I mean, you need this website at this time to do this PE and then this and so on and so forth. Whereas the simple things back, when when I was younger, if this had happened when I was younger, it would have been reading my books, playing some board games. In fact, we didn't have a TV most of the time. We did have TV sometimes, but not always. So I've never been interested in TV. And I would have built a den. That would have been my number one. Build a den and tell stories.
Best thing, all you need is a table and a blanket, right?
Exactly. and make it super beautiful with everything you can find around the house. And yeah, even teenagers, you know, I do. When I was a teen, I would have had a den, definitely.
Yeah, probably would have called it something a little cooler.
Definitely. Yes, it would have had a proper name, probably a sign.
Something.
But yeah, I think at this moment in time, those things are really important to remember. And they really are.
My son has young children, so I'm a grandmother.
This is impossible. Everyone at that moment is going, no, really?
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's told me that because his children are quite young, and it's of course a struggle because they have play groups and they have things that they're used to, going to the park, you know, at least. And he said that one of the things that's also really helped them is just easing up on their normal rules. So things that they weren't allowed, they ended up actually, what they did is they bought a little trampoline because they live in an apartment. So they don't even have a yard or anything, right? So they bought a little trampoline, and Ben, he's like, I think he's 3, he's turning 3, and he's up and down on that. And, you know, and before that, even though, you know, normally jumping on the couch isn't a thing, my son said, we just started letting him do stuff that we didn't let him do before because he has to get his energy out. So I think actually realizing that maybe all the normal, like, things that you would say no to, this world's not normal right now. So just kind of easing up and making things a little more fun at home too.
Do you think that helps?
I can't see it hurting. I mean, you see with young kids where they need to get their energy out. And truthfully, I think one of the things that really I'm struggling with right now, and I understand that our governments are stretched to their limits dealing with the emergency of COVID-19. So it's hard for them to think outside of that and think about mental health and think about families and all of that. But what's really difficult is that there are a lot of people that don't have the option of going to their cottage and don't have a house with a yard. And, so they're in apartments with their kids, and there isn't many options available to them. So yeah, if it helps to let your kid jump on the couch, let them jump on the couch, for later when things go back to normal and it's no longer okay. That's a tomorrow issue.
That could be the new routine. And I guess at this moment in time, there's going to be a lot of stress, anxiety, fear, anger, all these emotions that maybe some of us haven't even faced as well. And parents especially, but children too, and teens, and anyone at all. We're going through such a strange moment in time. So do you have any kind of recommendations for managing stress or anxiety for parents out there?
I mean, it's very hard. What I would say is this, because we're all different, and that's one thing that we learn as coaches. What is going to work for me isn't going to work for you. But I think one thing that's helped me is meditation, but not everyone likes to meditate. But if you think about it, there's a lot of activities that are meditative, right? So, I mean, for me at one point, I didn't realize this until later, but that was swimming. For a while, I was doing swim training as part of my, I was training for a mini triathlon. This is a very short-lived period of time. very short-lived period of time. But yeah, so I would hit that pool and I was doing laps, and it was incredibly boring because I didn't have anyone to talk to. I was just going from one end to the other, one end to the other. I didn't have, earbuds that worked underwater. And so, I was also focusing on my strokes and like making sure I didn't breathe water in and all of these things. So the beauty of that is that it didn't allow me to get too caught up in my thoughts, because really what I was doing is like 1, 2, 3 breath, 1, 2, 3 breath. That's a form of meditation, because you're coming out of that loop of thought where you're thinking about what's happening at work and the kid and the argument and all of this stuff that's going on. And you're kind of coming into a break, like a rest period for your brain,
Yeah.
and that in a way almost attaches you to a self that isn't one that comes out in other periods of time. It's a part of you that doesn't really have a name, a part of you that doesn't really have a definition. And so, that was swimming for me. That can be running for some. Now, obviously, we're in a world where those things aren't always accessible for people. Painting, coloring, like people, art, pencil crayons, anything that you can do that can sort of keep your mind at a very vacuuming, where you can kind of just try to escape that loop of thought that's there. Or you're never going to escape it completely, but at least observe it and realize, oh, there I am in a loop.
Yep.
So that's something. And then the other thing is that I really found it a bit of a struggle coming back to Canada, because I was living in a small beach town until recently in Nicaragua, and I had to make a very rapid decision to come back here because there weren't going to be flights. And so I sort of picked up and came back, and then I was in isolation. And a lot of my, outside of meditation, a lot of the way I use to sort of center myself is going for walks out in nature. And, at that time it would be like going to the beach and just like sitting on the rocks and watching the waves hit and things like that. So I was thinking about that, and I thought, how do I replace that? And I don't have an answer for you yet, but what I did realize is by going to the ocean and sitting on the rocks and walking, he was soothing, right? But to another person, that could be potentially a terrifying activity, And so really, it wasn't soothing because there were waves, there were rocks. It was soothing because I attached that emotion to that activity. And so what activity can I do instead that I'm going to attach that same feeling? Maybe it's just laying in a bath. Lately, it's just been standing and letting the hot water pour over me in the shower. But it's finding those little moments where you can kind of feel your soul breathe.
That's honestly, it's so strange when you're talking about this, because I had a conversation last night with someone literally about how your soul can breathe. Literally what you just said then, it's very strange. and we were talking about what makes your soul breathe, what makes you feel connected to that energy that makes you feel in that moment of happiness and relaxation. And if it's possible to have that at home as well as wherever that moment might be. And she asked me, she said, where's yours? Where's that moment that you feel connected to this energy and your soul is fed? And I said, for me, it's in the forest, walking, absolutely walking and moving through the forest and just feeling connected to nature and that silence and the sounds. And for her, it was so different. She was like, oh, that's quite boring. And it makes you realize that everyone has a different way of feeling relaxed. And like you, we hadn't thought about it. So I said, so, how are you going to replicate what you love doing in your time? She's like, gosh, I've never thought about it. Can we connect to that energy at home? And I was thinking, actually, I felt quite content over the past few weeks. So what is it I'm doing that's making me feel okay? Because we're in full lockdown here. I can't go for a walk at all. And it's actually, I do feel okay. There's not too much of a change in me. And I realized it's because in the mornings I'm listening to YouTube and listening to chill out, relax kind of sounds of the forest, sound of waves, and it's putting me into that moment and my imagination as well. So it's like you're managing to control your thoughts, to control that image that makes you happy.
Yes.
Which is meditation in a sense.
Yes. And that is one thing that was an amazing realization for me too the other day, because I've been feeling, anyone that has known me from a young age, I've always needed a certain amount of freedom, so this is my struggle as a young adult, as a single parent, like all of these things. And I'm finally at a point where I'm like, oh, I can, I have this freedom of movement. Now I don't, and yet I realized, what do we all have? What is the only thing that we have full freedom and control over is our thoughts, right?
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And like you, my number one value is freedom.
Yes.
It is. And like you, I've lived in different places, Ecuador and Africa, and I love that ability to go out and travel and not feel restricted in any way. But strangely, I don't. And maybe it's because yourself and myself, we've been through coach training and we are coaches, and we've learned that to control our thoughts and not let them control us.
Yes.
It's so helpful. And can that be translated, do you think, to families with children?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be a little more of a challenge because of the fact that there isn't, I mean, we also have the luxury, or at least I do, I'm not assuming, but of alone time right now. So that can be lonely. And there are days that I do feel very lonely, but then there are days that I'm like, oh, I'm so fortunate. I've got my dog who I talk to regularly.
Me too.
So I think that will be a struggle, but again, it's finding those moments. And I think it's also okay to tell your kids, I need some time alone. Mm-hmm. I also think it's okay. One of the things that I did used to do, actually, now that we're talking about it, I was so sleep deprived. Sometimes I would wake up at 5 a.m. just to have time before my kids got up, that I could sit, I could have my cup of coffee and just like enjoy the silence, and then on the days that I couldn't have that, even though I had a little more sleep, I was a vile human, because I really needed that moment in the morning. So it's just finding maybe those little times and trying, if you can, I would say, to really use that, not to be sitting there on social media, not to be catching up on the news, not to be doing any of those things, but just to do something that's really going to help your soul breathe, like we were saying.
That is the phrase of the day, the past 24 hours, literally. And when I was speaking to you earlier in the week, you mentioned sense of self.
Yes.
And that stuck with me. And I would love you in the remaining 10, 15 minutes, however long we have left, to talk a bit more about that, because it hit me when you were talking about sense of self.
That's something that I have only really connected to myself within the last few years. And that is because I was frankly terrified to before. I had not processed my emotions from my husband's death. I had a lot of guilt and a lot of conflict over the way I felt that I was as a parent. And also I tied up my identity so much with my value as, in my career and, my title, all of these things. So only recently, I think it's really only been in the last couple of years, and it was when I started going to meditation. And one of the questions that they asked, the meditation teacher asked, was, who am I? She would say, not who was she. She would ask us to ask ourselves these things. And it used to come up for me. I'm all of these sort of titles that I had either given myself or other people had given me. And she would she would say, try to like not connect to your roles, try to not connect to your anything that we would use to identify. So that's something that I've come to realize right now. It's like, I am not, who I was relating to was either titles that I had imposed on myself, my parents. It starts with your parents. It starts with as soon as you're born and named, you have a name, and then you're told all the things that you're good at, all the things that you're bad at by your teachers, by your parents, and then, by yourself, by your spouse, by your children, by your boss. And that plays again and again and again. And it's only been really recently that I've been able to be, wait a minute, no. Like, I am not what other people say I am, but even more importantly, I'm not what I have been saying I am. And it's incredible because even now still, and I think of myself as, I really do a lot of self-reflection and self-coaching and all of these things. But do you know how many times a day I find myself saying, oh, you're an idiot. I'll do something stupid. And see, even now I'm saying I do something stupid, but I do something stupid. I'm like cursing myself in my head. And if I ran into a person in the street, somebody that I didn't even know, didn't give one stitch about, I would never call them stupid, because I'm a compassionate, kind person, because I wouldn't want to be perceived as a judgmental person. I would be ashamed. And yet I'm doing that to myself, to somebody that I should be loving and caring for, so that's a very long-winded response about connecting to self, is just maybe dropping some of those labels and really just trying to, like I said, almost have those moments where you're with yourself and not caught up in this chain of thought, because nothing happens at that time. Like, you're not like, I've never had a profound meditation where I'm like, oh, I've connected to my inner being and the universe is now open to me. It doesn't happen that way. But what does happen over time is that I'm noticing myself becoming more creative. I'm noticing myself becoming more courageous. I'm noticing myself being able to say no to things, being able to take chances that I haven't been able to take before. And I think that's because there is this connection that I can't even perceive. I can't even identify what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's happening in those quieter moments. And the only other thing I would say about that is also, about self-connection and self-love. It's trying to look at myself as I would somebody else I love. So as I would my daughter, as I would my best friend, and think, even when I do things that upset me, would I be angry and yelling at them? Would I be saying to them, you failed? Or would I look at them with a sense of compassion and think, oh, wow, that must be really hard for you. And that's what I keep coming back to when it comes to I guess, self-acceptance and self-love.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because that is something that I don't think a lot of people learn until they hear someone like yourself explaining it. It's a lot of us, if you ask, oh, who are you? You would say, oh, I'm a youth coach, like I am. I'm a youth coach. Yeah, that's me. I'm a youth coach and I live in the countryside. And they'll go, the people that know go, no, who really are you? I'm like, I don't know what you mean. Isn't that me? It's my job. I said, no, you're not your job. You're deeper than that. And this is something I learned in the past few years, actually, really deeply, to understand that it's our values and they mean so much in our life. And when you conflict with them, it can have massive impacts. Thank you for sharing. I love that topic. And if I could just ask you one more thing, could you leave one last message to all the parents out there in the world?
Oh my goodness. That's a lot of pressure.
It is. I'm sorry. Kind of a summary or something very specific. One last important message.
I think the most important thing is, I would say, is love. Sit with yourself and think about your love for yourself and your love for your children, and let everything grow out of that. And that's, I think, anything coming from that is going to be, can only be good.
What a fantastic last message. I love it. We've ended on love. Thank you so much, Tracy. I really, really appreciate this. And I really hope that you'll join us in the webinars that will be running on Thursdays, because your perspectives and stories and vulnerability and your life experience is invaluable, and it's really helped me as well. So I really do appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's helped me to be here, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'm happy. Take care and stay safe. Okay, and well, of course. Bye for now. Bye.